80% of what you're doing right now is probably a waste of time. I know that sounds really harsh, but it's also just generally true, especially if you're an early stage entrepreneur. I want to talk to you about why that's true and what you can do to begin to focus so that you're spending more time doing what actually will make an impact. I didn't start to make any real money as an entrepreneur until I niched down. Here's the problem, is every niche that I picked arbitrarily failed. And I have been in so many niches, it's not funny. It's actually, I start to think about it and I get embarrassed. I've done medical and legal transcription. I've done purified mercury sales, import, export, wholesale, software development, web, SEO, PPC, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the problem with niching down, and it's a weird, sad, pernicious lie, because we tell all these young entrepreneurs, you have to niche down, go out and pick a niche. The riches are in the niches. Alex Hormozi calls it a niche slap. The issue with that is, if you pick a niche arbitrarily, and every choice you make in the beginning is arbitrary because you have no data to go off of, the odds of that failing are very, very, very high. So I developed a framework that I call the Hourglass of Niching, which incidentally I actually think is the natural approach to entrepreneurship. The Hourglass of Niching says that you start broad, and you start broad with the understanding that this is actually a bad idea. And most of us do this because we don't know any better. So when I started Solutions 8, Solutions 8 was a full funnel marketing agency, and we did web and PPC and SEO and graphic design and video production and. We were broad. And we did all of the services to literally every industry. As a broad business, I made no money and I had a bunch of heartaches and headaches, and it was really hard. But what it did is it allowed me to begin to see what the opportunities were. And so I narrowed my focus. And then I got a little bit more productive and a little bit more profitable. And then I narrowed to a point of real profitability. We ended up at 40% margins, which for a digital marketing agency where most of them are aiming at 15 was amazingly profitable. And that's what happens when you come to the apex or to the center of the hourglass of niching, is you find true profitability, which really allows you to scale a business. Now, here's what's fun, is once you've found that, you don't stop. Now you can branch back out. And what's interesting and counterintuitive is, with the hourglass of niching, all the services I offered in the beginning, because they were everything to everyone, were ineffectual. When I niched down into Google Ads, those same services offered within the context and from the perspective of that niche become profitable and effectual. So I'll give you an example. I was offering web design to anybody for any reason. Do you need a website? I'll build it for you, and please hire me. And I sucked, and I didn't make any money. It was super low margin, and it was hard. But then when we became a Google Ads agency, if I wanted to branch out and offer web design specifically to companies running Google Ads with a strong Google Ads spend from the perspective of a Google Ads agency, now that focused initiative lets me install tracking that I know is important to Google Ads, use messaging that I know is important to Google Ads, draw from their creative in order to influence their website, their content, etc., that is fed and informed by their Google Ads. I could run SEO. If I was running SEO beforehand, I was just like, please hire me, and I promise I'm going to try to do my best job. Or I niche down and become a Google Ads agency, and now that I'm good at Google Ads, when I run SEO, I know what key phrases work. I know what semantic index works. I know what schema markup they need. So niching down achieves profitability, and then branching out expands your horizons. There's many levels of analysis from a niche perspective, but there's three that are the most important for you to pay attention to. The first one is your service niche. What is it that you do? Are you a marketing agency? Are you a financial services firm? Are you a landscaper? Are you a pool supply company? Like, what is it that you do? What product or service are you offering? That's the x-axis. So that's level of analysis number one for niching. Level of analysis number two, which is the y-axis, is the industry that you're serving. I have a business that only serves Montessori schools. I had a business that only serves real estate investors. I had a business that only serves people running Google Ads, which is an industry unto itself. I had a business that only served cosmetic dentists. I had a business that only served stonemasons. So you have a service niche and you have an industry niche. Now, what's really interesting about that is you can start broad with one and go deep with the other. So you could be a full funnel marketing agency just for dentists, or you could be a Google Ads agency just for dentists, right? So how well you niche is up to you along each of those levels of analysis. Level of analysis number three, the z-axis, if you want to get three-dimensional, is geography. And I think the biggest opportunity facing marketers for sure, but all small businesses, is going to be getting geo-specific, paying attention to small brick and mortar businesses. These are the micro niches that nobody else wants to touch because they're too small. I have a business that produces 7 figures in gross revenue, 40% margins, passively to me, serving an industry that only has 4,500 businesses in the United States. Adjusted for margin of error, that's zero. That's the smallest niche you could possibly serve, and yet it ends up being massively profitable to me. My very strong opinion is there's no such thing as a too small niche. And the example that I gave, I did a talk at high level, and I think they got mad at me for saying this. Somebody asked, can a niche be too small? And my answer is no, not if the value you're providing is high enough. So to give an example, what if your niche is, I only serve one-legged pastors in Oklahoma who watch Friends or whatever. And you'd say, well, there's only 10 of those. What if you can charge 10 grand a month because the value that you're providing is so immense that 10 grand a month makes a lot of sense. And you have 10 people that paying you 10 grand a month is $100,000 a month. That's $1.2 million. And then because you've niched down with such degrees of specificity, your margins will be 80%, right? And again, it's an extreme example that when you niche down, you can provide way more value and you capture way more of the market. So instead of trying to be in a market where there's a billion people, well, if you're serving that market, guess what? So is everybody else. So is everybody else. When you find those little teeny micro niches and you choose to serve them to a degree that really makes you the only option that's available and accessible, you find these pockets and repositories of immense, immense value. All of the money I've made has come from niching down. I had the #1 ranked Google Ads agency in the world. That's an insane niche. That's not marketing. That's not digital marketing. That's not just traffic, because you can have organic traffic. That's not just paid traffic, because you can have paid organic and social. That's paid search traffic in an organic marketing, digital marketing ecosystem. Like niche. And it was an 8-figure exit. I own a digital marketing agency that serves Montessori schools. Not schools, not private preschools, private Montessori preschools. Smallest niche in the whole wide world. My first exit was lead generation specifically for real estate investors. And all we did was generate motivated seller leads. So this isn't like general real estate. This isn't just residential real estate. This was motivated sellers selling distressed property specifically to investors. Sell my house fast for cash. The other thing that happens when you niche down is you actually get good. Because that's one of the things we don't talk about from an entrepreneurship perspective. You have to be good. So many people that I run into that are struggling with business, they're struggling because they suck. They're not good at what they do. And it's hard to be good as a generalist. And that should actually just be obvious, because when you're a generalist, you're trying to do too much. But when you start to get really specific, and this could be true for any type of business, for your barber, right? If you're like, oh, I cut anybody's hair. Well, how good could you be? I only cut men's hair. Okay, that at least lets you focus. I only cut South Asian men's hair. Right? I only cut South Asian men's hair who have long hair. Like, oh, I'm half South Asian, by the way, so I'm allowed to say this. But now suddenly it's like, okay, you understand the texture and thickness of my hair, and you're used to people with long hair, and you're used to people who want male styles. Like, you're going to be way, 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 way better than every other barber that I ever run into that's like, oh, I can cut anybody's hair. And the more niche down you get, the more you put yourself in a position of really getting good at that service, really getting at industry, really understanding the service in the industry, and potentially understanding the geography. So niching down can be one of the most important things you've ever done from an entrepreneurial perspective, but don't choose your niche arbitrarily. Follow the hourglass of niching. Start broad. Start broad from a service perspective and then niche down. Start broad from an industry perspective and niche down. Start broad from a geographic perspective, and then you start to figure out what geographies worked. When we were running motivated seller leads for real estate investors, there were certain geographies that just did not work. Had I started solo in that geography, I would have thought, oh, marketing for real estate investors doesn't work. I wouldn't have realized, oh, Atlanta, Georgia is just too competitive and the cost per clicks are higher than that particular market happens to be worth. So starting broad lets you kiss a bunch of frogs, and then you narrow and you narrow and you narrow and you narrow. And then you reach this beautiful moment of true profitability. And to be honest with you, you could stop there if you want, or you could branch back out. That's the hourglass of niching. So yes, the riches are in the niches, obviously. Niche, you need to be niche slapped, obviously. But if you don't know what niche to choose, give yourself permission to start broad. It actually reminds me of one of my other frameworks, which is the quarter principle. If you haven't watched the video on the quarter principle, go check that out. These are kissing cousins in terms of frameworks, and they dovetail into each other really nicely. I hope this video was helpful to and for you. If it was, do me a favor and share it. Tell other people why it was helpful. Give them context. Let them know to come watch. Watch some of the YouTube videos. Thank you so much for your time and attention. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next one.